sure had our problems here, haven't we? We kind of missed a couple of weeks here, but that's because our good old webmaster was on a cruise and forgot to take everything with her, but that's fair because we needed to rest here too. You know, while I've been out, I've been visiting a lot of churches and seeing the different things, and something I saw last week just kind of went against everything that churches should be teaching about love, consideration, and the truth. Well, I want to go back to Matthew, the 19th chapter, the 14th verse. And Jesus said, "Suffer or consider the children. Let them come to me. Let them come in here and share with me, because that's what the kingdom of heaven is." He didn't say that you need to become as a child at that time to enter the kingdom of heaven. He didn't say a lot of things that have been a credit to him saying. But when I was a kid, and I need to give you a little background, I grew up in an interesting family. My mother was Russian German from a family that immigrated over here to America. My grandfather, Grosspapa, he was a farmer, a very good one. In fact, in Oklahoma, they have a lake named after him, and he was very good to the Indians, the tribes, and so forth. But he was a staunch Christian. And we all had to go to church with my grandmother. Later on, my mother took a job as a telephone operator, so you can see how far back that was. And she wasn't always able to go to church. So I would go with my grandfather and grandmother. And if you've ever been to a Orthodox church, they're very, very strict. And if you should fall asleep, whether you're a child or an adult, one of the ushers, or one of the guards, I used to call them, they'd come up with their long staff and they'd tap you kindly on the head or shoulder. And you'd wake up and you'd be right there to watch what it was you were supposed to be watching. Well, I didn't really like going to church. And my dad married my mom. He was an Irishman. That's kind of interesting. And he was a real hail fellow, well met, a typical Irish brawler and so forth. Some people said he was a rum runner. That meant back during Prohibition that he would take booze that he'd buy from the farmers that made it and peddle it out to the bootleggers, and they'd sell it to the public. But you get the idea of the kind of family I had. I had a father that had a great sense of humor and a mother that didn't have much of a sense of humor, but she did love Jesus and she loved God and the church. The point of this particular story, and they still tell the story about me, was a lot of times my dad, bless his heart, would be a little too tired after drinking all night to go to church in the morning. So I'd hustle up, and Grosspapa and Grossmama, they'd take me to church with them. And this particular time, though, my mother was off work, and so she went too. And being a kid, I'm pretty fidgety, and I like to do a lot of things and go a lot of places and be a lot of mess, I guess. But they kept patting me with the little club there and say, "Hey, wake up, do this, don't do that, don't be so rowdy, and be quiet," and everything else. And my mother said to me, she said, "If you don't straighten up, I'm going to take you home and let your daddy whale you. He's going to whip you, and you'll get disciplined." Well, that was kind of a common thing. I got a lot of that discipline in my youth. And it didn't bother me at the time because I guess I was still pretty rowdy. But on the way home in the old Model T, as we were driving home, I was getting a little worried. We got there and Mom walks in and she says to my dad, "I don't want you to take care of him because he just wasn't a good boy at church." And I looked up at my dad, and this is the story my mom still tells. And I said, "Well, Dad, the trouble is I was so worried about you, I kept looking around to see if you were coming there because you weren't there." And Dad couldn't whip me that day, so my mom says. Well, what I saw this week was children being disciplined because at a country church because they weren't behaving the way the parents thought they should. In fact, this one little guy actually fell asleep. Well, if you heard the sermon, you'd have probably fallen asleep too. But that's not what Jesus said. Let me tell you something about Jesus. He must have had a wonderful sense of humor because kids loved him. And kids don't like old, stogie people that are so staunch and stiff they can't even breathe straight. I'm going to continue this story on next week because there's a lot you'd like to know and a lot that might help open your eyes to what truth really is.